Welcome to Module 7, which is exploring how to carry out horizon scanning for new innovations and technologies. The learning outcomes for this module are to enable participants to understand the importance of refining the scope prior to embarking on a horizon scanning activity, also to discover the various sources of data which help to provide insight on healthcare and medtech innovations both in use and in development. Finally, we will explore ways of summarizing the data which has been collected to help understand which innovations may address the challenge in the problem statement that you've previously created. So this webinar is one of a series of training modules in the NHS Insights programme. The aim of these different modules is to develop a culture of innovation, improve innovation-related knowledge, and empower all staff to be innovation aware and ready. The Insight programme has clear aims to help explore, discover, and evaluate innovations which can make a real difference. So firstly, I just want to go over some of the different terms and terminology. So environmental scanning is examining what competing technologies are currently in use and currently on the market. In contrast, horizon scanning also includes what's being developed in this area. So it examines how current unmet needs might be addressed in the future, and it looks at what the emerging trends are. Technology landscaping is a little different. This is examining where a current technology can be applied. So maybe you have a new idea, a new concept, a new innovation, but you're not sure exactly where that can be applied. You may also have successful usage of a product in one clinical area, and you're wondering which other clinical areas could benefit from the same product. Finally, there's demand signalling. And that's where an organisation like the NHS, where they publish, they broadcast what their current needs are for new technologies and new innovations. And you can see there's a website there where they have identified specific areas where they're looking for new technologies, new medical devices. So why is it important? It's important for different groups of people. So it's important for innovators to give some insight on their competitors, to see what they're currently working on, what's on the market, what's in development. It's helpful for innovators to understand what market needs there are and to illustrate some current and future trends and the direction of travel. And it's also helpful for innovators to enable them to update their value proposition and the contents of their business model canvas. But horizon scanning and technology landscaping are also important for investors to assist them with due diligence when deciding whether and where and how to invest. Finally, it's also important for healthcare teams and commissioners, helping them to explore what potential solutions there are on the market or in development which can address their unmet needs, technology gaps, and future challenges. So what are the drivers for change? What are the drivers for new technology? Well, there are a number of different drivers. There is, of course, NHS policy with the recent 10-year health plan and those 3 shifts, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Described within that, in that 10-year health plan, there are 5 big bets. So those 5 big bets are having data to deliver impact, using AI to drive productivity, genomics and predictive analysis, wearables and robotics. So 5 big bets for technology that they're looking to have introduced to make those changes within those 3 shifts. But then there are other drivers as well. So there's demographics. There is, of course, an aging population. And then there are also workforce challenges and shortages. There are other drivers as well. Disease burden, so chronic diseases, an increase in multimorbidity. There are regulatory changes. There was the introduction of the UK medical device regulations and the UK CE mark and the ongoing usage of CE mark and what the future holds there, whether CE mark products can be used beyond 2030. Then there are other drivers for change. There's health economics. There's an increasing need, of course, to demonstrate cost effectiveness and productivity gains, not just clinical impact and patient benefit. And there's net zero, so the need to develop and provide a carbon reduction plan and evergreen assessments. And then, of course, the need to reduce inequalities through the Core 20+5 programme. So what's involved? Well, there are some key stages in horizon scanning, and we're going to spend a lot of time, particularly on those first 2. And it's important to allow sufficient time for each of these different stages. So firstly then, looking at data collection. Refining the scope before you start is vital because it helps to determine the volume of data that you're going to have to analyze after you've collected all that data. Now, for example, there might only be a handful of innovations out there if you're looking at robotic surgery. In contrast, there could be loads. For example, if you're looking at diabetes apps, there are going to be many, many of them, which would all need analysis after you've collected the data. So it's important to revise the scope and refine it right at the beginning. And you need to consider various questions. So firstly, who's the audience for this activity? Is it colleagues? Is it an external audience? Is it a lay audience? Is it management? Are you making a case for procurement? What level of detail do they want? What level of insight do they want? It's important to consider as well how much resource is available. So what's the budget for this project? How many people are involved? Is it just you? Is it you and colleagues? How much time has been allocated? And then consider scope boundaries as well. So are you focusing purely on the need that's been identified, just on that problem statement? Don't get diverted by looking at other areas. Also, are you only interested in products that are on the market, or are you also looking at those that are in development? Are you focusing exclusively on products that are available in the UK? Maybe you're only interested in products that are already used within the NHS. Or you might be looking a little bit wider. You might be interested in looking at and identifying opportunities and products that are being used more widely and internationally. So the first thing to look at is sources of data and data collection. And the first thing we're going to look at is secondary sources. So what we mean by secondary sources, we mean data that's already out there, data that you don't need to go and find by interviewing people. So there are numerous sources of secondary data, and we're going to go through each of these in turn just to highlight what's out there. So there are different sources of data at different stages of development of a product. So, for example, if products are already on the market, then you might be looking at different sources of data compared to if you're interested in products that are still in the research or the development phase. So products that perhaps aren't yet on market, you might find information about them in patent databases, literature searches, and who's been getting grant funding. In contrast, if you're looking for products that are already on market, you can see who's already got a medical device approval for it, a UKCA mark, a CE mark, FDA approval. What does NICE recommend? So in terms of identifying some of these sources, if you're interested in something that's maybe having clinical trials already, there are different clinical trial databases that you can search, and the World Health Organization have them, and there are also different territories, different geographies have their own ways of searching different products that are undergoing trials in the US, UK, EU, and so on. Similarly, there are patent databases where you can see what intellectual property has been registered with different patent offices. And again, you can do worldwide searches, UK, European, and US. And then there are also some commercial platforms which give you a little bit more data, a little bit more in depth. So this is an example of one called PatsNet. You might want to see which sort of innovations are being funded, maybe through grants. So this is, you can search, for example, on the NIHR database of who's been receiving grant funded opportunities. You can filter by different programs and different clinical areas and see who's been funded, for example, in the cardiovascular space for artificial intelligence. Similarly, there's a SPRI healthcare program. They have a database where you can search which different innovations have received funding in different clinical areas. So you see there are 15 funded in the cardiovascular space. You can also identify which innovations are being funded from angels or venture capitalists. So this is an angel investor in Cambridge Angels. You can see which companies they're investing in on the right-hand side. You can search the NICE database. There are two different ways of searching their MedTech innovation briefings and their MedTech technology guidance programs to see what some innovations they've looked at and see what their views and opinions are. And then the NIHR have what they call the Innovation Observatory as well. There are a number of different reports there for some pharmaceutical products, some medical devices to see what their findings are on their own horizon scanning activities. Then you can also search on the MHRA portal. You can see which products have already been awarded UKCA marks, which have medical device regulations in place already. So, for example, by searching endoscopes, you can identify what products there are, what class of device they are, and then you can go in and examine a little bit more which manufacturers, which producers are developing endoscopes in these different areas by searching under particular codes. The FDA have databases as well, where you can search in different ways. So you can search by product, or you can search by clinical area. So, for example, this is an example when searching for a pulse oximeter. So, different bits of information available here. You can determine what the class of that device is. So, pulse oximeters under the FDA are class 2. You can see what regulations those come under. You can so identify this product code, and that product code DQA we'll come on to in a moment, but that's helpful to identify what other products are available in the pulse oximeter space. And hopefully it gives you a summary of what a pulse oximeter is as well, so that you can establish that you are indeed searching for the right type of product. So then by putting in that product code into their database, you can identify all the other products that fall under that code and find a whole host of different products that have got FDA approval as pulse oximeters, and there are how many there? Up to 500 different ones available. Some of those dating from the 1980s, and some of them more recent. Another way of searching what's maybe out there, what's being investigated by some NHS colleagues, is to explore the NHS Futures website. NHS Futures, it's a collaboration platform, and it has forums where people are sharing ideas of what they've been trying out, what devices they're interested in looking at, swapping ideas for how to transform and improve their work lives and patient outcomes. For digital solutions, there's something called the ORCA database. They have an ORCA app finder where you can search by certain keywords. So, for example, if you put in diabetes, it comes up with 116 search results. There will be some duplication because they consider different products under different platforms. So there'll be separate entries for Android apps as well as Apple-based apps. And then you can get information about how they adhere to data security, data compliance, and evidence for the clinical impact that some of these products are having as well. They also have a different database called ORCA Verify, where you can identify whether a product has been tested already by ORCA, and is it safe? Is it safe from a digital perspective? Has it gone through the DTAC process to look at data security, data protection, cyber security, and so on? So, for example, this one here, Grow Health, you can see that it's been awarded a Silver Badge of Honor, and you can see that silver means it meets their standards for clinical assurance, data privacy, security, and usability, and the manufacturer is committed to maintaining compliance with these standards. So, it's a useful resource for identifying where different digital solutions might be with their data security, cyber security, and so on. Finally, ORCA have another search engine called ORCA Compare, where NHS trusts, for example, can put in data, do a direct comparison between different products, do side-by-side comparisons, and get detailed reports of how different products in the same clinical area, how they line up. So the next thing I want to talk about is the use of AI. Clearly, there are some benefits, as I'm sure many of you have explored and discovered, that the use of AI sort of search engines can be very time-saving, but it can, of course, give results that may be questionable. There might be data which you need to go and validate to ensure that it's giving you accurate data. Helpfully, some AI search engines, some AI tools do actually provide references. One that I've used a fair bit is one called Perplexity, and you can see then when you're searching for something. So here a search about robotic surgery, it actually gives you the references for all the data that it finds. So you can then easily go in and validate some of the data that it's producing. So it's this in its response here, it's identified 19 different sources, which you can go and check and see if they're correct, if they're relevant, and so on. What about other sources of data? Particularly when the data isn't easily accessible. It's not maybe in a database. There's no way of finding out the information that you want. Well, then you can turn to primary sources of data. And what do we mean by primary sources of data? We mean one of the many stakeholders involved. So it could be clinicians, it could be academics, it could be patients, it could be carers, people that really have the insight that you're looking for. It could also be maybe some key opinion leaders, and it could be people within the NHS, maybe clinical leads. So how do you engage? How do you find out about them and find out where you can get information from them and contact them? So, for example, one source of key opinion leaders is through the NICE website. You can see in a lot of the MedTech innovation briefings and other guidance that they provide, you can see who their commentators are. So you can see who those key opinion leaders are in, for example, diabetic retinopathy. So for potential people to speak with there. Royal colleges can be a useful source of expertise as well. If you're looking for key opinion leaders from maybe Royal College of Surgeons or midwives or wherever. Other source of data are NHS clinical leads. So there are national clinical directors for a whole host of different diseases. So for cancer, cardiovascular disease. So again, a good potential source of data to get the information that you're looking for. Fine. So now let's say you've collected your data. You've been able to get some secondary sources and primary sources of data to get what you need, and then you can collate it in some ways for some analysis. So of course, a handy way of collating it is maybe in a spreadsheet, and you can develop that spreadsheet as you're collecting data to make sure that it's comparing and contrasting the information that you're looking for, to examine perhaps how closely it aligns with your needs, with your unmet needs, and the functionality that you're looking for. So I've put a note in there about working horizontally and not vertically. If you have limited time, and it's likely that you will, don't spend the bulk of your time working vertically. Don't spend 80% of the time looking for apps in a particular clinical area, because then you've only got 20% of the time to fill in the other columns. So it's important, once you've found a competitor or something that you're interested in getting more information about, that you work horizontally. So you complete all the data, and then you can spread your time accordingly, rather than spending, as I say, 80% of the time looking for opportunities, but only 20 seeing what functions or functionality that they might have. So a good use of time is an important thing here. And then, having collated the data, perhaps in a spreadsheet, there are many and varied ways that you can use to analyze and highlight some of the findings. And we'll go through some of those in a moment. Because when you develop tools to analyze the data that you've got, you want to be able to understand how the different options out there, how do they meet your needs? How are they addressing your problem statement? How is it better than what you've currently got? How is it better for the patient? How is it better for the user? So there are several ways that you can perhaps use to analyze the data that you've collected. So one example from a competitor summary is the use of a Venn diagram. And then you can see overlapping needs and see which competitor fits into which space, because you might want something that combines all. You might want something in that sweet spot. So a digital solution that not only provides online appointment booking, but also clinical triage, as well as the opportunity to signpost to other services, other services. So then once you've collected your data, you're able to map the competing products that you found, see where they lie within that Venn diagram, and then you know that there are potentially 3 opportunities in that sweet spot that you're looking for. Another tool that you can use is something that's called a technology radar. So you on the outside, you put in some of the key points of interest, and you can map where some of the competing solutions, where they are in terms of, are they being piloted? Are they already on market? What's the feasibility looking like? So you can map them and then very easily see which solution is very close to the what it is that you're looking for. Another way you can analyze the data of perhaps of competitors is to use sort of these 2x2 frameworks. So you might split things into analyze them from their regulatory space. So do they have a CE mark and FDA approval? Do they have neither? Do they have one but not the other? So for example, an example here, this was, I think, with pre-eclampsia solutions, you can see which product fit into which space. So those one green top right, they have both the UK CE mark or a CE mark and FDA approval, whereas the ones bottom left are more research tools. Another way of splitting that out is to maybe identify whether competing solutions, do they already have a footprint within the NHS, either through a sale or a pilot, and what maybe the ORCA score is from the app database. How highly have they rated it? So then you can plot them accordingly, and you can see that there are many there with pretty good score that have indeed been piloted or have been sold to the NHS, whereas the ones perhaps with lower scores don't yet have any NHS activity. So again, another way of laying out the data so that it's easy to see how they compare. So horizon scanning, top tips. So the first one is focus and scope. So remember your time management in that data collection. You need to spread your time accordingly. So perhaps spend 40% of the time in data collection, and then I would say 30% on analysis and 30% on writing it up. It does depend on what sort of report you're putting together, so those figures might need to be adjusted. But if you've got limited time, do make sure you set enough time aside for analysis. Avoid assumptions, so validate responses that you're getting, perhaps with some interviews. Make sure from the outset you determine what questions that you want answered. Make sure you appreciate the difference between scanning for the unknown and searching for the known. Look outside the box a little bit as well. So maybe not everything is a direct competitor, but there could be something maybe in a different space that could also be applied in the area that you're looking for. Try and work out whether the analysis that you're using, is it identifying the opportunities and gaps that you're looking for? So does the activity that you're doing, does it actually answer the question? Is it solving the problem statement that you had at the beginning? So things to avoid, again, scope. Scope might be too wide, so you don't have enough time to cover it, so you need to narrow the scope. The scope may be too narrow. Maybe you're only finding 3 or 4 competing products where there may be more out there. Again, related to scope, being overambitious with the time frame or the budget. Working vertically. So as I mentioned, when you're filling in your spreadsheet, don't spend 80% of the time looking for the products. Make sure you spend a suitable amount of time looking for what functionality they have. So work across the spreadsheet, work horizontally, not vertically. Be careful of bias, and that may come from your own perceptions or also from some of the people that you're speaking with. So try to have a wide cross section of people to avoid that bias. And finally, avoid the so what. So don't just provide a list of competitors and suppliers without doing some analysis, because your audience is going to want to have a conclusion. They're going to want to have a so what, so that they can easily determine what solution that's out there might be addressing their needs. We've compiled a list of resources from some of these links that are presented in this webinar. There are several available in terms of grant funding, people that have been grant funded, people who have had investments, people that have got patents, people who have been reviewed by NICE, those that have got medical device regulations in place already. And then I've also given you some links to some support services from within the NHS that can help in this area. There, hope you found this webinar useful. If you want to get more involved, you can contact the NHS Insights programme. You can also, of course, speak to your own local innovation team and leads within your own trust or ICB to get further information. Thank you.